Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webcast entitled PRIMEChat, Better Insights, Better PR-ROI. Today's conversation is brought to you by Prime Research and powered by OnStream Media. In May of 2017, 10 top corporate communicators from some of the world's most recognizable organizations shared their experiences, guidelines, and insights for the application of research in public relations. In the coming weeks and months, Prime Research, along with conference partner, the Institute of Public Relations, will present a series of one-to-one interviews featuring each of 10 executives. The first installment features Atle Erlingsson, the head of communications at SAP North America, and is hosted by Prime CEO Mark Weiner, the Chief Executive Officer at Prime Research Americas. Mark is also a trustee of the Institute for Public Relations, a member of Author Page Society, and the author of books, essays, and features about PR research. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webcast, please click the Ask a Question button located at the bottom of your screen. Simply type your question in the box and hit the Submit button. Alternatively, you could submit your question via Twitter using the hashtag PRIMEChat. All questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Mark Weiner. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Atle. Thanks to the audience for joining. Thanks for Compro for organizing. Prime Research, the company for whom I work as CEO, provides a range of traditional and social media monitoring, analysis, and research-based consulting. Over time, I've gotten to know Atle Erlingsson through our relationship. Atle leads the North American communications for SAP. As part of that assignment, he oversees media relations, internal and executive communications, and corporate social responsibility in North America for SAP. Atle's an experienced communications executive, and he's the leader of a team of experts, and he's proud of them. So please join me in welcoming Atle Erlingsson. Atle.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Thanks for looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks to Prime, and thanks to the folks at Compro for the opportunity to be part of this. I know we're going to do some Q&A, and so what I'll do is I'll walk through somewhat of a presentation here. I'll spend a little bit of time, if I will, just giving a little bit of background about SAP, our company, and where we've come over the last several years, which I think is important to provide that landscape as to where we are now from a communications perspective and the customer storytelling work that we're doing. And then how that really resonates with the media tracking and the customer pipeline touched metric that is really the focus of the conversation today. But for those of you who are on, look, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the online platform here, and we'll follow along. And if you want to ask a question, while I'm talking, happy to stop and answer those as we go, so we can make this more of a conversation. So please don't be shy, and feel free to chime in if you'd like. So in terms of SAP, just for those of you who may not be entirely aware of our organization, we are one of the world's largest enterprise software companies. Our core competitive set includes the likes of Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, Salesforce, Workday, and a number of other smaller, let's just say, one-off line of business solution providers. When we talk about our vision and mission as an organization, it is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. That is not a tagline. It's not a marketing slogan. It truly is a statement that we believe and live by every single day at SAP. It's in our communications, both online and externally. Our executives incorporated into a lot of the messaging that they have as they're talking about the organization, and it really resonates because it is representative of what we do as a company. So for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with enterprise software, we essentially provide the software to help companies run. Everything from supply chain management to finance to HR. For those of you who may use Concur for your travel and expense management at work, Concur is an SAP product. We actually acquired them a few years ago, probably one of our most well-known solutions, just given the fact that it's pretty widely used on more of a B2C level amongst folks at their different companies. We have about 350,000 customers globally, and they all are ranged the gamut from very, very large global multinational enterprises all the way down to some of your more smaller mom-and-pop solutions. 76% of the world's transactional revenue runs on an SAP system. I mean, it's a pretty staggering number when you really think about it. 76% of the world's transaction revenue. So SAP's technology is embedded in companies, like I said, large and small, far and wide, across more than 180 different countries. 98% of the world's most valued brands are SAP customers. So I would say, what's that? Two out of the we have some work to do to get the other two out of the 100 to have the 100%. But 98% of the most valued brands. So again, those are obviously going to be some of your bigger ones. But we're very proud that 80% of our customer base are actually small to medium-sized enterprises. So smaller companies are running on SAP as well. Our revenue stands at about 22 billion euros. We're a German-based company, so from a financial standpoint, we report in euros as opposed to dollars. Over the last, let's just say 7 to 8 years, we as a company have undergone a pretty dramatic transformation. I think today is actually the 10-year anniversary, or at least this week is, of the iPhone. We all know the impact that the iPhone and the smartphone has had on the world today, and how people not only communicate, amongst family and friends, but frankly how businesses interact and communicate with their customers, and how they are driving new business processes and new business opportunities. Back in the late, let's just say 2008, 2009, we really saw a massive change that was happening in the digital world, and we knew as a company we needed to transform ourselves from being your standard applications and software company to really becoming a fully digitized organization that is really prepared and able to support our own customers. And so why is that important? Well, it's important because we spent about $50 billion in investments, about $30 billion in M&A activity. Concur, like I mentioned, was one of those companies. Ariba, which is a procurement application, is another company that we acquired to really build out and have a very robust end-to-end portfolio to support our customers. Not only that, we spent about $20 billion in R&D to build out some of our signature products that we are selling today. S4 is our new enterprise resource planning system, and HANA is our in-memory database solution. And I'm mentioning this is all going to kind of come full circle here, so I'm not giving you guys the sales pitch of SAP, but I think it's important to understand just the background of where we've come. And so we've spent about $50 billion in really transforming SAP into being a very digitized company, and we've seen tremendous growth over the last several years. Our market cap today is about $120 to $25 billion, triple what it used to be. Our revenue has obviously increased, as well as our profits and so forth. That has really created, for us in communications, a wonderful opportunity. This is the perfect time to be in communications at SAP because we have such a great positive story to tell. Not only from an investment and analyst perspective, but from a customer perspective. And we have about 350,000 customers globally. And these are the folks that we want to tell our stories through as a communications team. I think for those of us who are in communications, and I say that very generically and broadly, and for those of you who are on the call, I know you're representing companies large and small. You're from agencies and obviously working in-house as well. I think many of us, historically, when we have media opportunities, whether it be an incoming reactive opportunity, or if we're out there proactively pitching, or if we're agenda surfing and trying to tie our companies into current of-day topics, we always think about who's the best person to tell that story, and I think we naturally default and gravitate toward our executives, right? Whoever the executives are that we're working with, or our CEO, or the managing director, or whoever the head is of a certain line of business. We've really challenged ourselves at SAP to flip that on its head and think about our customers. And how can we take our customers and make them the priority, have them out there talking about SAP, as opposed to necessarily our executives? Don't get me wrong, we're absolutely out there having our executives do interviews and building their profiles and so forth. But when we talk about who's the best influencer for your company, And I think regardless of what industry you're in or what product or solution your company or your client may be selling, there's no better influencer out there to tell that story than their customer who's using that product or solution and has, can talk about the benefits of it. Or in our case at SAP, can talk about how their company has transformed or has improved a business process or is driving greater efficiency or has created a new opportunity to sell. If we can have our customers out there telling that story for us, it's far more impactful than having an executive or someone within the organization telling that story. And so that's what we're doing at SAP, is having our customers out there telling that story for us. The way that we're doing that, obviously primarily is going to be through traditional media. And here's just a few snapshots of some headlines of some stories that we've recently garnered from an earned media perspective. We are closely collaborating with our marketing colleagues. So when you think about the paid media perspective, right, if they're driving kind of core marketing work, and then obviously the advertising that goes along with it, we're complementing that on the PR side. But let's first go ahead, if we can tee up that video that we have that'll play through YouTube. If we can play that video, that'd be great. This is a 1-minute commercial. You may have seen it out there. It's running on a number of different networks with one of our key customers, Dell Computers. All right, so that is the Dell video that's currently out there, right? So our marketing and our advertising folks, they're laser focused on having our customers tell that story as well. I would take our marketing team and put them up with any other marketing team out there. They do amazing work. And they are also focused on having our customers tell the SAP story as best as they can. And then on the PR side, we're focused on that in a number of different ways, and obviously earned media is certainly part of that. But it's not just about placing the articles. We all know that there's value in having customers tell our story. We know there's value in getting coverage in top-tier media outlets or opinion-leading outlets that are important and impactful for our own industries and our own specific businesses. But what we challenged ourselves with at SAP was how do we come full circle and draw a real connection between what we're doing from a customer storytelling perspective and having a positive impact on the business. That was the challenge that we set out about 18 months ago, to really figure out how to create a relevant metric that the business would value and understand, that would complement and underscore the work that we're doing from a media perspective. And so we talk about metrics all the time, right? In communications, we're always working on building out fancy PowerPoints to show the value that we're creating and driving not only for our clients, whether that be within an agency setting or if you're in-house and your internal client is going to be your executive. We always look at, right, there's historically, right, it was number of clippings, or it was impressions or ad value, and I think some people still see value in that today. We've obviously migrated and advanced that now to more of a share of voice and tonality perspective. And I think depending on the business that you're in or the size of the organization that you're working in, and frankly the knowledge and appreciation that the executives or clients you're working with have for metrics, the type of metrics you'll put in front of them are going to vary, right? And for some, it's going to be it'll be share of voice and tonality. For others, you may include ad value and impressions or any other variation of that to some degree. Here for us, this is just one recent slide that we had from Q1 that'll show share of voice and tonality. Again, our core competitive set around Oracle, Salesforce, IBM, and Microsoft. If you look in the bottom right quadrant, we're clustered in there with Oracle and Salesforce. From a share of voice perspective, IBM and Microsoft tend to skew a bit higher. They're just much larger, broader companies than we are. But on the tonality side, we're skewing very, very green. And in fact, we're ahead of our competitors, which is great, right? And there is certainly value there. And these are some metrics that we will absolutely include as we're reporting up the chain to show the value of what we're doing from a communications perspective. But what we wanted to do when it relates to our customer storytelling effort is go beyond the share of voice and the tonality. We wanted a dollar figure. We wanted to show the customer stories and the work that we're doing from a storytelling perspective, how that touches our customer pipeline. Because in the end, right, we got to bring in the dollars to pay the bills. And we want to show truly a connection point between the revenue and the money that the company is bringing in and where communications is touching that within that sales cycle. Now, look, let me be very clear. We are by no means insinuating that the communications work we're doing is closing the deal. But in any deal cycle, particularly in the software setting where the deal cycles can be quite lengthy, there are obviously a number of people in different areas of the organization that will touch some part of the deal at one point or another. And if we in communications can connect ourselves to that sales cycle and touch it in a positive way through a positive engagement with the customer, or building a bridge between the account executive and the customer for a relationship building opportunity, or providing some sort of free PR opportunity that brings value to the customer, we then in communications are touching that pipeline and influencing it in a positive way. And that's what we did last year. So this is just a rough number from 2016 around the pipeline that we touched in communications in North America, which is around $240 million in customer pipeline through more than 150 different customer stories and engagements. So what does that mean, Atle, right? Let's talk this through. So there's three pieces that we look at from a customer pipeline perspective. The first one is going to be traditional media, so just your generic traditional media coverage. The second one is going to be through programs, creating some speaking opportunities for our customers. And the third one is going to be what we're calling value-added engagements, which is primarily driven through our CSR activity. We're always looking for opportunities to tie in our customers and partners into our CSR work, and so where we can, we're bucketing that into value-added engagements. What's important here is incorporating our customers into one of those three, whether it be through media coverage or speaking opportunities or our CSR work, it has to do one of three things. So first, it has to either build brand affinity with SAP, right, building a stronger relationship between the customer and us, or a touch point between our account executive who is working on that deal along with our customer, creating some sort of free audience exposure for our customer, right, bringing some additional value for that customer, or frankly, free PR. I mean, we in many ways are almost a full-circle PR, almost like an agency for our customers, because we're out there pitching stories for our customers just as much as we are pitching stories around SAP. Because if we can get our customers out there talking in the press about what they're doing at the company and making sure that integrates or touches SAP and how they're using technology to drive that business outcome, that ultimately supports our business and supports our customer. And so all of those will then funnel into touching customer pipeline. So let me give you a couple of examples, so one for each of these, from a traditional media programs and from a value-added engagement perspective. So when we look at traditional media, we are constantly sourcing stories amongst our AEs, with our business executives, and frankly, even having conversations with our customers where it may be appropriate. Each of these customers, Rev Group, Horizon Pharma, and ScanSource. Rev Group is a manufacturing company. They actually build fire trucks, for example. Horizon Pharma is a pharmaceutical company. ScanSource is a technology company. So earlier in this call, I had mentioned S4, which is one of our signature products here at SAP. It's a new ERP system that we have. And as we're having conversations with each of our customers about this, we started to notice this trend that these three customers wanted to get S4 in part, not solely, but in part because they're heavily involved in some M&A activity. And we thought, wow, this is actually really interesting. We're seeing this trend of these companies coming to us for S4 to help drive and support their M&A activity, because having a simplified single ERP system more simply and efficiently enables them to onboard their acquired companies. So we packaged this up. We went to a contact that we have at the Wall Street Journal, and we said, hey, look, we're seeing this really interesting trend story with these three customers who are using this product to help support their M&A activity. And the reporter was immediately interested. We packaged it up with interviews and made executives from each of those customers available to do interviews. We also had our CFO do an interview with the Wall Street Journal talking about this. And it led to a really nice story, both online and in print, that says the new back office tech can be a merger's best friend. It mentions SAP only once, but all of the companies that are in this article are all SAP customers. And this did two important things. So one, our business loved it. They took the article, they sent it around to all of the account executives and said, hey guys, if you're working any deals where our customers are interested in S4 and they're involved in M&A activity, it's important for them to see this article of how other companies are using our solution. And frankly, I think we all can agree there's no more value that you can bring to an organization than when the executives start pushing around the article and encourage account executives to use it as part of their sales cycle. But on the flip side, when we're talking about customer pipeline that was touched, we absolutely touched the pipeline for those 3 customers. We not only created a very positive experience for them, we brought them free PR. I mean, I don't know what company is not going to want to be in the Wall Street Journal talking about the growth and the transformation that they're seeing as a company. And so we created free PR, a great touch point with our customers. It was at the C-suite level, right, to the decision makers, and we helped create and build a bridge between those customers and our AEs. And so by doing so, we absolutely helped to touch the customer pipeline and that sales cycle for that year with those specific customers. When we look at programs, so speaking opportunities, and I think all of us, whether we're on the agency side or whether we're in-house, we're doing some sort of programs or events throughout the year in one way or another. And I would challenge all of you to find ways to incorporate your customers into those programs. So again, it's very easy for us to stick in our executives, and that's okay, and that's important at times. But again, there's no greater influencer for you than your customer or the user of your product. 80% of our customers are small to medium-sized enterprises or small to medium-sized businesses, and we have an event every year in New York called the SME Summit. And we just had one several months ago where we brought in about 50 journalists, both bloggers and your traditional reporters, to come in for a full-day summit on how technology is transforming and changing the small to medium-sized enterprise. We wanted to make sure that we engaged our customers in one way or another, and so we thought about which customers would make sense to come in and be part of that. Who would, and this goes to that second bucket that I showed you previously around programs and creating some key audience exposure. If we have 50 core journalists who cover the small to medium-sized enterprise market, absolutely our customers who are in that space would want to be part of that conversation and talk about and profile their companies, obviously with the nuanced connection of how they're using SAP technology to drive their business. But we reached out to our customers. We got a number of customers to come who were interested. They sat on panels. They talked about their businesses and their organizations and what they're doing in front of those journalists. And that ultimately touched, for us, on the communication side, about $700,000 in customer pipeline because we created a very strong, positive opportunity, built brand affinity with SAP. It gave them free audience exposure in front of a key audience. And it also gave them some free PR in front of those specific journalists for those who wrote stories. When we look at value-added engagements, and this is specifically on the CSR side, just one example of what we've done to try and draw a connection in this space. We did a survey called Leaders 2020 where we looked at what were the critical attributes for leaders and executives to help drive their companies in the digital age by the year 2020. And we were having a panel discussion at a university in the New York City area. Look, technology is a very competitive space, but I think there's one thing that all technology companies are collaborating on, and that's driving and talking about the importance of STEM education. And that was what this panel discussion was all about. And we thought, hey, how can we get our customers involved in this, as we're always thinking customer first? We reached out to a number of account executives in the New York area, offering up this opportunity to have an executive come and be part of this panel discussion, a very high-level thought leadership discussion at a university about the importance of leadership in the digital age. And one of our account executives wrote back right away and said, hey, I think I have someone who would be amazing. He actually came from the education area. He formerly worked at a university and is now the CIO at a company. It's actually a new prospect company for us, and we're really working on trying to close the deal, and this could be a great engagement opportunity for that customer. And so we said, perfect, sounds fantastic. And so he reached out to the customer. The CIO was immediately interested in the opportunity, came and sat on the panel, and it was a great positive experience for that CIO. Not only were they on the panel, and it was some good exposure for him, but he was able to drum up, he told us, a number of different interns. He actually solicited at that venue to have people who were interested in interning at his company to submit some resumes, and so he was able to flush out a really nice intern program based off of that. Keep in mind, he was a new CIO, so he was starting to build out his own team. Our account executive wrote us a couple of weeks after and said we closed the deal. It was a multi-million-dollar deal. Again, communications wasn't the driving force of that, but he said the ability for him to interact with that CIO, leveraging our CSR event and this thought leadership panel, it created a touch point for that account executive and that CIO where they could communicate and build a relationship on something that wasn't specifically about the sales cycle or SAP or our product or solution, right? We helped to bridge the gap between the account executive and the client by utilizing our CSR program and a communications opportunity. And so communications played a really important role there in touching that customer pipeline. Again, we didn't close the deal, but we proactively reached out to our AEs and provided a really nice opportunity for that AE to leverage our CSR event in a unique and different way, and for him to build the relationship with that CIO instead of simply building it through talking about the sales cycle and trying to close that deal. And so for us, there's kind of three phases in this customer storytelling program and how we build this out. I'm not going to blow smoke. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy to do this. And I think that's probably why it's so inherently difficult for communications to build out a robust customer storytelling program, because the first problem, obviously, is identifying who those customers are, right? I mean, I think we naturally in communications are roadblocked by the business to get access to those customers. And that is, first and foremost, the most important piece of this is building those relationships with the business, with the executives, with the account executives, and showing the value that communications can bring to the table. We actually created an asset for our field and for our customers, almost a buffet, a menu of options of communications, tools, and activities that we could provide the field and our customers to bring some added value. We actually created that document and pushed it out to the field and said, hey, please use this as you're having customer conversations with your customers. We do frequent spot checks with our AEs to drum up customer stories that could be relevant. So once we've built out and identified customer stories, we then move into the track and place into that phase 2, where we literally have a biweekly meeting where we have conversations with the folks on my team who are involved in external communications activities and touching customer stories, where we talk about where we are in the cycle of getting that customer story into the media, any challenges that we're facing. We're all in there to help each other, right? And what roadblocks are we facing? Is the AE not being receptive? Are we facing any challenges with the customer that we can overcome? Do we need to build out the briefing document and basically do all the heavy lifting for their communications team in order to get their CEO to do the interview for us? We have those conversations to make sure that we do two things. One, we've knocked down any roadblocks. And two, we keep this top of mind for our teams internally because, frankly, it's so easy for us to get sidetracked by other activities and communications. We need to make sure that this stays top of mind. And then we identify the reporters that we want to start targeting and pitching these stories to. And we always try and aggregate our stories into trend stories. I think those of us who are in PR, we realize, if you go and pitch a story to a reporter, you're much better off packaging it as a trend piece and providing them with all of the pieces of the puzzle than simply, throwing something over the fence and hoping, frankly, that they even see the email, which is unlikely in this day and age. And so the tracking and placing of that coverage then moves into the measuring and the validating. And this is by far the most important piece, because as we are building out this metric and building credibility around it, we need to make sure that it is absolutely true and that it's absolutely authentic. And so once we've gathered our coverage in North America of our customer stories, we then work with our own CRM tool to go in and see what the customer pipeline is that our AEs have put in there so we can track that. And for those of you that have never really been in a CRM tool, customer pipeline can vary. I mean, what it is today could be different in November because it just changes throughout the year. And so we will grab the number that it is today, but then at the end of the year, we're going to go ahead and we're going to validate that number, and we're also going to check with the AE to make sure that that number is accurate. Because when I'm sitting down with an executive and I'm telling them about this customer pipeline touch number, and if they start prodding and asking any questions, we need to make sure that our number is true and there are no holes that can be poked in that. That is very, very important. And I think in the end, this, regardless of what industry you're in, what line of business you're in, or the size of your organization, you can do this in any different way. In the end, it's about connecting the customer story work that you're doing to a dollar figure and revenue within the organization. And so I would challenge you to try and figure out how to draw that connection. Talk to your stakeholders within the business about how you can make that work. Build relationships across the organization so you have people who are supporting you and who are advocating on your behalf. I think generally speaking, and I'll close it out here, Mark, and if you want to open up for Q&A, that's fine. I think generally speaking in communications, and I'm saying this very, very organically and just kind of generically about communications in general, I think the biggest deficit that we have as communicators is a lack of knowledge of the business. And I think that's been historically our greatest challenge. Instead of being tactical executors and, writing press releases and pitching stories and just kind of doing that tactical work, we really need to be counselors and advisors to our executives. And the only way that we can do that is to truly understand the business and understand the sales cycle that our stakeholders are involved in. However you can learn about that within your business, or if you're in an agency and you obviously have a number of clients, which makes it a little bit more challenging. But educating yourself on the business and understanding what those business leaders are going through and what the sales teams are going through enables you to bring much more to the table and add a lot more to the table than simply being doing the tactical work that communications has been typically known for. You could really advance the needle and show much more value by having that business knowledge. So I'll end it there. Here's my email address, my Twitter handle. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or just wanted to connect. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect on there as well. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I'm always happy to collaborate with other communicators, at other companies as well. Mark, I'll toss it over to you if you wanted to open up for any Q&A.
Well, thanks, Atle. Fascinating presentation. I can tell you in my experience working in public relations and public relations research for 30 years, I can tell you that what you're describing solves two of the most frequently expressed requirements among professional communicators, and that is to demonstrate the value of public relations and generate a return on public relations. So what you're doing clearly connects public relations and sales, at least the degree to which public relations can assist sales by offering these opportunities. But also you take the feedback you get through the research to refine programs over time, increase efficiency, and deliver a better return. That's what everybody's looking for. So you've shown how you made this connection with sales and tying and forging a stronger bond between public relations and sales. Who initiated that process? Was it public relations or sales?
It was our team, actually. It was our team, and it was really wanting to advance, really challenging ourselves to advance the needle from a metrics perspective. Look, there is absolute value in the core metrics that all of us use in communications today. Again, whether it be share of voice or tonality or ad value or impressions, I think every executive or stakeholder that we deal with values those metrics in different ways, right, and sees different value in them depending on their business, on what you're trying to achieve. Everyone has different strategic priorities at any given time, right? So all those metrics bring value in a different way. We wanted to, but I think we all agree that all of those metrics and the traditional core media tracking metrics that are out there today, we're not able to draw a true connection to the business, a real true connection to the sales cycle. And that is what we challenged ourselves in trying to build out in a way that was relevant for our business at SAP, was how do we draw that connection? How do we bring more value to the business so the business sees the impact that we're having? We know, and we knew back then, that our customer storytelling effort was impactful. I mean, I don't think there's not one person in our organization, and there's probably none at any of your organizations for the folks who are listening, who would argue that having the customers out there telling the story of what you're doing is probably brings the most value. We knew that, but we wanted to quantify that as best as we could, and so we initiated this process and really tried to think through how we can make that happen. And create, frankly, some boundaries for what that looks like to make it as relevant and impactful as possible.
Got it. So while you're helping the salespeople connect more with their clients, in a way, you're putting into place a program that allows you to connect with your internal clients in sales.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's two prongs here. I mean, I think that Wall Street Journal article is just one is just a good example of the two things that we try to accomplish with all of our customer storytelling work. One is, how can we give our account executives or our sales team collateral and resources that they can include in their sales cycle? That brings immediate value to the account executives, right? Like they're laser focused day in and day out. They live and die by the deal. How can we as communications support them in that? So if we can give them collateral that they can bring in to help better tell their story and sell what they're selling, all the better, right? So that's great. That's one piece. But again, that's not necessarily something that we can draw a specific number to. And at the end of the day, we all have metrics and we all have KPIs that we're all building out. And how can we add a relevant KPI to underscore that work? And that's the second piece is that dollar figure that we're trying to track.
Mm-hmm. I understand. So especially in companies like yours where sales cycles are long, it's difficult to make a statistical connection. Consumer products in particular, those kinds of brands are doing that kind of work, but it's because the sales cycle is so short, the number of customer interactions is great, the number of transactions is high, and there's enough diversity that they can do things that somebody in your category would find it difficult to do. But in both cases, the way you're doing it and the way that these brands do it, they're quantifying in a statistical way. But what you're doing, seems to me, is you're pulling up right next to sales in a way that may not be quantifiable, but it demonstrates through the touch points that you are contributing to sales in a way that the salespeople recognize is a contribution. I don't know that they need data to prove it. I think you demonstrate it with your success.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Mark, it's trying to put it into a language that they understand, right? Yeah. I think historically, again, all the traditional metrics, there's value in that in different ways. I think the average salesperson, again, their head's down on the deal, and how can we show the value in a language they understand? And they understand customer pipeline, obviously. And so it's really drawing that specific connection. You're right.
Yep. And I'm sure the people to whom you report recognize those testimonials from sales as being an important performance indicator. So you're probably speaking in a more compelling way than what data would indicate. But you've gone beyond simple clip counting, so it's not just the testimonials. What prompted your desire to go beyond the simple measures you were describing, like ad values or clip counting, to do the kind of more detailed, evolved competitive analysis that you do now?
I think it was us wanting to challenge ourselves to draw that specific connection. We are very customer-first oriented as a communications team. I think probably more so. We have built such strong relationships across the business, and frankly, even with our customers, that we have other groups within the organization reaching out to us for potential connections to certain customers, right? If they're, everything from maybe a marketing activity to a program or an internal all-hands meeting. Whenever we have some sort of communications activity, it is absolutely customer first. And because of that, because we put so much time and energy and commitment into building those relationships, we've become known, I would argue, within the organization for having those strong relationships with customers. And people will now actually come to us seeking insights and help and guidance on how to kind of bring customers into certain situations. That was actually a place that we didn't expect that we would be today. But and it was frankly a little bit surprising. But we put so much time and commitment into driving this program that it's kind of led to this different state of recognition within the organization that we previously weren't in. And look, we have, I don't think there's a day or a week, obviously, that goes by where I'm not asking my team, what customer stories do we have in the pipeline? Who's working on what? Where are we in this, in the cycle of this customer to get this, story pitched? And, where is this pitch sitting with this specific journalist? If it's a big top tier reporter, constantly keeping it top of mind and constantly keeping it relevant. That's really, really important. So for those of you who are leading teams, I think that's absolutely key. The second piece is, there really is a snowball effect in building this out. Once you start really proactively pushing and driving and securing these stories and seeing the reaction from the business, it inspires and motivates the team to do more because you can see the immediate value that you're bringing. We all are pushing around media clips daily, right? I mean, half of you are probably sending around clips to your clients and others this morning on stories that, appeared overnight or appeared first thing this morning. How many of those did your client or your executive reply back where they were super excited about the clip and saw tremendous value in it? I would argue maybe 10 to 15% of those, because there are so many stories out there that are being pushed on a daily basis in deep verticals or publications. Sure, they're important. Yes, they are important, and they're all part of our traditional media metrics around share of voice and others. But then when you push an article in a truly like a top-tier publication or in a publication that is really impactful for the business, and it is very specific around talking about your company and the product or solution that your company is delivering and how it's having an impact on that customer or that end user. The second you send out that story, you're going to start seeing the business circulating that story and sending it around to their teams and encouraging their account executives to use it in their sales cycles. That's very, very different. And when you start seeing that type of reaction and that type of response, you know you're onto something, and you know that the stories you're having are having greater impact on the business than simply, working on the reputational work and trying to build out that share of voice. And you'll know when that happens because you'll start seeing the reaction in the business. But it's those stories that have the impact and the value, and those are the ones that we're really trying to work on. And so when we saw that happen, we said this is really having a huge impact on the business, and these are the ones that they want. And how do we quantify that for reporting purposes? So we know that there's value in this, and how do we quantify it? And that ultimately led to us, trying to build out this new metric.
Got it. So how do you propose to others who are listening to tackle this? It feels like it's a conversion, that you're becoming customer-focused, by which I mean internal customer-focused as well as external. But there was also there's usually a conversion where research data becomes a source of decision-making intelligence, and so that, in other words, public relations is not always a purely creative function, and sometimes people resist that. How did you get your team to buy into this approach, and one that relies on data as well as creativity?
So, as a leader of a team, I can stand on a soapbox and shout as much as I want about the importance and value of something, and that'll get the team's attention for a little bit, but it's not going to be sustainable. And you need to go the extra step, and the team needs to truly see the extended value of that and the impact that it's having in order for them to get excited about it and make it a priority for them on a daily basis. I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Customer storytelling is hard. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of commitment. But we know that there's more impact in spending, a month, of course, not every day, or maybe, kind of just making sure that it's top of mind, but working on a really signature big story for a month that has true impact, than working on, let's just say, 5 or 10 really quick reactionary media stories that may pop up in some lower trades that don't have as great of an impact. And so my point is it's that snowball effect of showing that value and people seeing the impact that they're having on the business. I don't think there's no one on this call, and there's no one in communications that doesn't want communications to have an impact on the business. And I think that's our greatest challenge, right? It's having that seat at the table and showing the impact that communications truly has on moving the needle. And that's the challenge that we all need to ask ourselves, if you're an agency or if you're in-house, and whatever size your company or industry that you're in, is how do I draw that connection between what we're doing and impacting the business? And look, what I just walked through in our presentation now is not, by any means, is not something that's transferable to everyone on this phone. What it's intended to do is to show, look, there is light at the end of the tunnel. If you really think about how your business operates and how the sales teams work and what they're doing, you can draw a connection in between the work that you're doing in communications and ultimately touching the business. And having those big wins and seeing the response from the business and from the executive gets people really excited. And it's the gold at the end of the rainbow, right? It's what we're all aspiring for in communications and in our industry, is to have a true dollar sign figure to show the impact that you're having, and that's what we're all aspiring for. And knowing that the big stories that we're placing in these publications, and again, top tier is great, but even key trades that are impactful for your business are just as valuable. But when we see the reaction from the business, that inspired us even more, and it inspires the team to keep going and kind of slogging through that process to uncover customer stories. And really, once you start showing the value to the account executives and to the field, they will come to you. Trust me, they will come to you because they're going to see the value. And every sales team out there and every rep out there, if you can do as a communicator anything to help them close a deal, you will be their best friend. Trust me, you will be their best friend. And they will come to you and they will engage you and they will bring you into the work that they're doing. And that brings added value. I mean, look at our communications colleagues, and I say that generically, right, at all of the different companies and that we're working in. Where does all of the funding go? Where does all the headcount go? It doesn't go to communications, right? It doesn't. Trust me, it goes to marketing. I mean, they're the ones that get the big dollars because they've done an amazing job of drawing a connection between what they're doing and pipeline and customer generation. They've done an amazing job of drawing a true correlation between what they're doing and driving customer pipeline. We need to start changing that narrative and getting communications at the table and drawing that connection as well. And when that happens, the company starts providing those resources and starts throwing more and more money because they're seeing the value that communications is bringing.
Excellent. So, in closing, Atle, what's the best advice you'd give to the people on this call and the public relations people generally who are just starting out on this journey of measuring, proving value, and improving performance?
I would say there's two things. I would say one, learn the business. Again, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us in communications. I mean, we're not inherently in the business, and so we're a little bit on the outskirts, which creates somewhat of a barrier. I would say learn the business as best as you can, and if that means taking an account executive to lunch or going, asking for half an hour with, the head of your specific business unit, just to kind of simply walk you through how the business operates and the nuances of the business is really, really important. Frankly, regardless of what we're even talking about now, that would be my number one piece of advice to any communications professional, especially for those who are just starting out their careers, is to learn the business. And secondly, ask them where they see value. Ask them where they see value, because while we're talking about here about, again, drawing a connection with customer pipeline, that will resonate with some executives, and I'll be honest, it's not going to resonate with others, right? Like, every executive sees metrics in a different way. Ask them what resonates best with them, because you want to be bringing as much value to the business as you possibly can. We don't want to draw assumptions that an executive understands or appreciates share of voice or appreciates tonality. At the end of the day, for some executives, it really does matter to them if reputation is a key strategic priority for them at that given moment. But if it's not, and if they're just, specifically focused on selling and closing deals, then maybe it's something different. And it's important to have that open and honest conversation with your stakeholder around where they see that value, and then adjusting your communications work to help move that needle.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Atle. You've provided some great insight, in a very personable way. Felt like we were sitting in the same room. I'm sure others felt that way, as I did. So I'll say thanks to you. Let everybody in the audience know that Atle is the first of a series of interviews and presentations like this one coming from the Institute for Public Relations Prime Research Conference last month. Follow Compro, follow Prime Research on Twitter and social channels to stay on top of it. Our next speaker represents McDonald's.